A while ago, I was pleased to discover one of my videos, more specifically one I'd created 3 years ago, had broken 5 digits in views. That's more than any video I've ever made on this channel, or any channel I've ever recorded or edited for. In this video, 5 tips on running sanity in Call of Cthulhu, I went through some pieces of advice that have greatly worked for me, including how I present the loss of control in a player's character, and expressing my feelings on the random madness table in the Keeper's Handbook. Ignore this table entirely. And while I'm very pleased on how much this has helped others when it comes to running Call of Cthulhu, I can't help but feel that there's one section that I think I fell short on. Failing forwards. For example, what is failing forwards? Well, you know that classic moment where the players just can't open a locked door, and now the game has suddenly grinded to a halt because nobody can work out how to get in? Or perhaps your detective players have followed the wrong path in their investigation, and now the trail has run dry and they're at a dead end. Well, failing forwards is designed to prevent that from happening by putting a more proactive spin on a missed roll. Put simply, it's a technique a GM can use in a TTRPG in response to a player failing a skill or an action, wherein, rather than shutting down the player's attempts by just telling them their efforts didn't work, they give an alternative interpretation on the failed roll. Like, maybe they've actually met their goal, but their efforts aren't as effective as they'd have liked. Or perhaps their efforts have caused something else to happen that has now put the characters in danger. But is failing forward all that useful in an investigative horror game like Call of Cthulhu? Well, it's now 3 years later after I mentioned it, so I'm going to break this point down further, as well as give you some examples that you can use at your table. Let's begin. The Keeper's Handbook goes into some interesting detail on how skill checks work in Call of Cthulhu. On page 84, the book describes the act of pushing the roll, a very handy mechanic where, after addressing the skill was unsuccessful, you can tempt the player into re-rolling that skill again, but in a different way, but also foreshadowing the danger if they fail again. So for example, you could say, you look at the wall you wanted to climb and realise the rain has made it slippery and dangerous. If you want to knuckle down and start climbing despite the risk, you can give me another climb roll, but if you fail again, you're going to slip and cause yourself an injury. This does 3 very important things. Firstly, it downplays the failure in the first roll by making the outcome disappointing, but not unsafe. In this case, thinking twice before climbing a slippery surface. If the player accepts the failure and changes their mind, no harm is done. Secondly, you offer the player another attempt at the roll by either suggesting a different method or letting them come up with their own one. And thirdly, it raises the stakes on their attempt. It makes them question just how much they really want to succeed. Are they willing to put their character in jeopardy just for this success? I found that the act of pushing a roll is an absolute favourite for my own players. Well, partially it's because they're out of luck points to spend at this point, but I like to think it's the act of raising the stakes in this pivotal moment that really gets them excited. And it's not just regular skills. They like pushing themselves to learn dangerous spells, or performing a desperate stunt at the last minute. You know, real dangerous things that could go catastrophically wrong at any moment. There are times when, as the Keeper, you just know that the game needs to get back on track. Maybe you can see the players are getting bored, or it's getting late and you just want to get to that dramatic cliffhanger that you've been planning. Whatever the reason, you just want to get this hurdle out of the way and keep going. This is where we can implement what I call success, at a price. This is where you can impact failure in a different way. If we were to go back to our locked door example, perhaps failure doesn't mean that the characters can't open it, but rather their actions aren't as perfect as they would have hoped. Maybe their lockpicks break when opening the door, or their method is so noisy it attracts the wrong attention. Or perhaps their efforts leave so obvious evidence of their tampering that will point them at the scene. Forgive me for being philosophical for a moment, but why do we hate failure? Well, one possible answer to this question would be because we're denied what we want. Naturally, this is frustrating, and the same can be applied to our games. There's nothing more annoying to a player than discovering that they're just shy of their goal because they performed a poor roll. And this is certainly true in an investigative game like Call of Cthulhu. It's happened to me too many times where my player characters are scouring for information on a certain legend or a monster, and I've got the handouts that they need in my hand, ready to go. They roll library use or spot hidden or whatever, and they fail. Is that it? Is all that time wasted? Do their characters just go home knowing absolutely nothing? And what about my handouts I wanted to give them? Are they just going to go unused? Sometimes, if you think giving your players a frivolous result will be disappointing for all parties, consider giving them the bare minimum result. And, similar to success at a price, this is very useful if you still want to keep the game flowing smoothly without slowing down progress. Sometimes the dice just isn't on our side. But isn't that kind of why we use dice in the first place? The chance that we may fail? I'm aware that these examples I'm giving have come across as coddling the players for what's essentially just rolling a number on a dice that wasn't what they wanted, and it's often simpler just to let them face defeat. That being said, just because they didn't succeed, this still leaves opportunities open to them afterwards. This is often known as the no-but method, where a player may not have gotten the result they wanted, but there's still a silver lining to their attempts, such as learning information that they weren't planning for, or maybe they get a clue to another technique to getting what they want. Officer Declan is locked in a furious chase with a hooded figure who's stolen a valuable tome that could spell danger for mankind. After racing across a busy street, Declan's player fumbles a dodge roll and comes face to face with a speeding car. The chase is over. The thief has gotten away. However, as Declan watches the thief disappear out of sight, he notices a sheet of paper has fallen from the stolen tome. A single page that's suddenly become a vital clue for the investigation. In this example, the player has failed the chase, and the bad guy has got away along with a valuable object. However, instead of just cutting the scene there, the keeper decides that the chase wasn't a complete disaster, and offers the player one clue that they can use to progress the story further. This is a game mechanic I'm absolutely stealing from another investigative game, Son of Oak's City of Mist, that I think we could use to give an alternative to raising the stakes. It offers a unique response to a failed roll or a risky maneuver from the player character. Give the player two or more difficult choices to achieve their goal to determine how much the character is willing to succeed. So, for example, let's say we have a player character hanging on for dear life after failing to jump over a chasm. The keeper says to the player, "As you hold on for dear life, I'm going to give you two options. You can either give me a strength roll to keep holding on and hope that your friends can save you in time, or you can drop your beloved rifle that's in your other hand into the chasm to make it easier to climb back up." This is such a great method of adding weight to a failed roll, as it allows the players to decide how to respond, rather than leaving it up to the keeper to decide. So, those are the options I would offer to all keepers who are willing to use the method of failing forwards in their game. However, don't think that this is an absolute necessity. Don't forget, this is a horror game, where risks can often spell disaster. Failing forwards isn't forgiving or ignoring bad rolls. It's about allowing the players to progress with ease and avoid grinding the game to a halt when things don't go their way. Thanks for watching.